Gusty winds, increasing fire risk. We're tracking multiple changes into the weekend outlook. I'm ABC 10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Woods and looking at a weather impact alert heading into the weekend as well. Here's a look at the timeline. When Sunday into Monday, the impact being that fire danger due to the dry, gusty winds. So the need to be fire ready with the go bag as well as an evacuation plan. And get ready for fire season. It is here. Fire weather watch going into effect early on Sunday, and that will take us through our Monday evening forecast up and down the valley and towards the Delta, the Carquinez Straits, with wind gusts up to about 35 miles per hour. This time of year, we tend to see those fire risks at the lower elevations. It will start to migrate its way up to the higher elevations a little bit later on in the season. Now, setting the stage for all of this, a little bit of warmth building into the end of our work week forecast. We've got the clear skies, no precipitation out there at this hour, but there is a weather system and actually a couple of them brewing off the coast. And what that's going to do is settle into the Great Basin, and it creates the gusty winds. We have a slight chance of seeing some showers and even some thunderstorms in the higher elevations for our Friday and Saturday forecast. So we pick up periods of cloud cover coming in for our Friday, a slight chance for showers, and again on Saturday, very isolated, and that snow line largely above the passes. Might get a couple of sprinkles up there overnight Saturday into early Sunday, a couple of snow flurries on the passes, but that's about it. We're not looking at a ton of accumulation. But again, this is what's setting the stage for what will be our first fire weather watch of the season. A risk of those thunderstorms exists throughout the Sierra Spine for our Friday and again on Saturday, but that's going to shift its way a bit up to the north and then off to the east, kind of migrating around another low moving through the Pacific Northwest. We're going to keep these extended forecasts going with this weather impact alert in place. ABC 10 Plus is where you can find these extended forecasts as well as weather explainers and our weather and climate specials. Make sure you download that wherever you stream for free on TV. All right, let's get to it. Fire and then heat in the timeline. Saturday, we have a few of those mountain showers, and I'm going to show you how all of this is going to be mapped out on the overall view across the West Coast. Sunday into Monday, that's when we get into our weather impact alert. Gusty winds, low humidity, and low elevation fire danger. Tuesday, we start to see warmer weather developing and a moderate heat risk that will be in place for much of the rest of the week. Here's a look at the setup. As I mentioned, we've got a couple of low pressure systems moving through the Pacific Northwest, but as they start to rotate around this building ridge of high pressure, they go right towards the Great Basin. As that happens, it's the difference in these two weather systems that create those dry, gusty winds, offshore winds for the higher elevations, northerly winds throughout the Central Valley. They compress, they warm, and it can create some dangerous fire conditions, especially, like I said, this time of year tends to be those fine fuels, those grasses. They just dry out so quickly with just a little bit of heat. Doesn't take much, and we've got fuel for a fire. Wind gusts into our Sunday are around 30 to 35 miles per hour up and down the valley. As we head into our Monday forecast, once again, we'll see those northwest wind gusts to about 30 to 35 miles per hour. What you'll notice is it's not so prominent for the higher elevations. We'll still have gusty winds, but really where we'll feel the impacts is particularly through the central and northern part of the Sacramento Valley, but towards the Delta and areas west of I-5. That tends to really be the focus area of those stronger gusts. Now, this is going to start to taper off by Monday at 8 p.m. We'll still find occasional gusts, but at that point, we start drawing in this light southwest wind. That ups the humidity because that's got a touch of that Pacific air to it. I wanted to show you how much the humidity will drop. So this is Saturday at 5 p.m., kind of before the onset of those gusty winds develop. Watch these humidities throughout the Central Valley. So we're running about 25 to almost 40%. Now let's take a look at Sunday, same timeline, and you can see how much it drops into the teens. We're talking 10 to 20% humidity throughout the valley. Even heading towards the coast, Fairfield, which has more access to that onshore flow, drops to below 30% humidity. We'll see a touch of that for the foothills, but the valley is where we're going to see those critically dry air mass where we have that humidity down to about 10 to 20%. And again, the gusty wind. So both of those factors put us in a fire weather watch category. Now, this is issued several days before an event. which may produce critical fire conditions. When we start to get higher confidence, if conditions are likely and it looks like we have better confidence, then a red flag warning may be issued. That's what we're kind of looking for. By Saturday afternoon, we should have some better guidance if that red flag warning does indeed get issued by the National Weather Service. So we'll be looking closely. That being said, this is the time of year we pivot from our wet season to our dry season. And with the dry season comes fire danger. A great time to get that go bag ready with the 5 P's in mind: people, pets, papers, prescriptions, and photos. So for people, pets, you want to make sure you have all the medications, the proper papers. That could include some medical documents. Especially for the pets, you want to make sure you have a carrier as well, just in case you end up at a facility that doesn't have one and they say, oh, we can take you, but you have to have your carrier with you. Prescriptions, both for people and pets. And again, those photos, just grab the ones that you really want to make sure you have if you do have to evacuate. Here's the reason why it's low elevation fire risk. And what I'm showing you is the soil moisture throughout the state of California. We have some critical dryness through Southern California, and we'll look at the drought monitor in just a moment. But what we're looking at with this particular weather event is the increasing winds and low humidity right through the sector, which happens to have very dry fuel. So if a spark starts, winds could not only spread it, but also intensify it just because of the available fuel. We don't have so much right now in the foothills and the Sierra above 1,000 feet because we've had recent wetting rain and even some lower temperatures, so haven't seen the fuels dry out all too bad right now. Here's a look at our energy release component. This is kind of measuring, okay, let's say a fire starts. What's the likelihood of seeing a big fire break out? We're starting to enter into that neutral phase here. The blue line indicates what's normal. So by the time we get into June and the end of June, we're going to get into the larger fires likely. So if a fire were to start, we have the weather conditions that could promote fire growth. It is very likely it would become a bigger fire. So we're kind of in that neutral phase. Definitely one to keep an eye on for the Sacramento Valley and the surrounding hills. That's going to be below 1,000 feet. Looking at the Diablo Range and the Santa Cruz Mountains, also starting to enter into that neutral phase here with our current energy release component at about 33%. But that will continue in that green line to kind of enter into that neutral phase here. A little bit below our average. We've had decent enough rain, but anybody that's driven around the Tracy area, Altamont Pass, even a little bit farther to the south, you're starting to see how those hills are browning out and getting very golden. So we have that significant fire potential in the lower category, but we are entering into that dry phase here where we see very low conditions and moist soil conditions. It's going to be in the higher elevations. And again, that really takes a little bit more time to dry out. Our Sierra snowmelt, this is a good factor to look at as well. Back in April, we had a lot of snowpack on the ground, so that certainly gave some insulation to some of the moisture and the fire potential. But now fast forward just about a month and a half, and you're starting to see how our snow water equivalent is dwindling. We got a little bit of snow coming in over the past week, and that helped to kind of put a pause on the aggressive melting that had been happening. It was really accelerating here through the month of April into early May. We're still above average in terms of that snowpack and how it's melting. The area shaded in blue is normally where we see our snowpack melting off, and it's been a little bit faster than average, meaning the area waterways are running fast, high, and cold right now. And with the heat event coming next week, just something to keep in mind. It is particularly dangerous out there on the waterways. Building our water year, just to kind of wrap things up where we have been, where we're headed here. And this will help set the stage of what I'm going to talk about next is our heat event and why it's so important to understand what has come right before this. 50% of our annual precipitation is in the rearview mirror. We're basically not going to see much of anything moving forward. And unfortunately, we're almost to that point where we've passed our peak snowmelt. Our water supplies are pretty much where they are right now. We're not going to get much in the way of additional accumulation or snowmelt, things like that. So taking account of what is in our reservoirs, our groundwater, our surface water is really important at this point because we're about the point where we start to head into bigger heat. Water becomes at its highest demand until we wrap up this water year at the end of September. Again, we're getting a little break here with the extreme heat. We get a little bit of moisture moving through the Sierra for today and again for tomorrow with some high elevation snow right along 395. Don't let that catch you off guard if you're doing some traveling this weekend heading towards Yosemite or perhaps right around the California-Nevada border. Could find some snow flurries there. There goes one low pressure system, and you can see how it settles into the Great Basin. For our Sunday morning here, in opposition is that building ridge of high pressure. Now that's going to keep us high and dry for several days here. We get another little pulse of those winds coming in on Monday as another weather system kind of slides its way up to the north and down to the south of the state. And then high pressure will be the dominant forecast element moving into the middle of next week. In fact, we get into a somewhat moderate heat risk for Monday that expands ever so slightly into our Tuesday, but more so densely compacted into the Sacramento Valley. We'll continue to see this into our Wednesday and even deeper through the week. So we're pretty much stuck in this pattern. That being said, we're at the point now where 90s are going to become a little bit more regular in the forecast, so 90s won't necessarily trigger large areas of heat risk. We'll be looking for those 100s, which, by the way, I'm not seeing in the forecast. So for our Saturday, we get a little break from the heat, and then it kind of comes roaring back here. These are dry, warming winds that are setting the stage for the warmer weather ahead for the middle of next week, which, by the way, leads us into the Memorial holiday weekend. Can you believe we're already here? Our departure from normal will be well above average, but it's this time frame right here, Sunday into Monday, where we have that weather impact alert because of the gusty winds. Now, again, those are dry and warming winds, humidity low, fire danger high. And then right after that, once those winds die down, we've already warned the environment. So under that ridge of high pressure, easy access to bump up those temperatures. In fact, that 95-degree day next Wednesday could be the first of the year. We've already seen 80, 85, 90, got very close to 95, but not quite yet for Sacramento Executive. And right after that, we start tracking our first potential 100-degree day, which typically falls on June 11th. I mentioned how high those waterways are. Looking at our water supply as we start to head into the drier, warmer part of the year, things are fantastic. I mean, honestly, third year in a row that we have water. We're not talking about drought. It's a somewhat rare situation in California to have 3 years of at least near, above, or close to average precipitation. So for Lake Shasta, we're pretty much at capacity right now. They're actually releasing a little bit of water from there. We are 99% full for Lake Oroville, our second largest reservoir in the state. And for Folsom, this is a big recreation area. We've had a little bit of trouble getting boats on there because of the golden mussel rule that came into effect this year, but boats are now starting to move back onto the waterways, and so things are very full right now. You'll also notice in the blue line here, we'll reach that peak right about June 1st and then slowly start to draw access to that surface water. This is the wrap up for our major reservoir supply levels, and as I mentioned, it is amazing. We're about 90 to 99% full right now. Shasta is our biggest reservoir. Oroville, the second one in the state, and Trinity's a big one as well. Nice to see these levels here. Folsom's a smaller one, but it does serve a lot of the metropolitan area for Sacramento. For New Melones, Don Pedro, as well as San Luis, looking pretty good. You might see that San Luis is a little bit lower. That's an off-stream pumped water reservoir, so that is basically adds a lot of flexibility and gives water into the California aqueduct. All of them are serving multiple needs throughout the state, so it's nice to see that we have water in the tank. Now, that being said, we actually didn't have that great of a water year. It was decent for Sacramento Executive, but what really offered that buffer is the previous 2 to 3 years where we had some pretty decent water numbers. This 22-23 water year is what dug us out of a previous drought, even though this year, 21-22, was more than what we saw for this particular water year. It just wasn't enough to dig us out of that drought. But 22-23 did it. It added a lot of cushion for our water supplies, and then that was followed by last year was really good. And then this year, what helped us to draw up those water numbers was not so much our statewide precipitation, because what you'll notice is that line of demarcation from dryness to wet is very stark here right along I-80. Very wet in the northern part of the state, very dry for the central and southern part of the state. But the northern Sierra had our average to slightly above average snowpack, and that's what added again, kind of when you look at the cumulative effect of how much precipitation, when our largest reservoirs were being fed by water and our northern Sierra snowpack was really healthy, that just helps save us from drought conditions for surface water. But soil conditions are not looking great. Our week-to-week drought monitor, there was a little bit of improvement just because we got that little wave of wet weather moving through, but we're still seeing a good part of the state in drought conditions. In fact, when we take a look at the number of residents in drought, it's over 27 million people. That's no change from last week, but that's still a lot of people and a lot of agricultural areas that are still dealing with drought. April happened to be the 36th driest on record, so to date, we're a little bit behind where we should be. January through April, 51st driest on record. So we had hit and miss precipitation throughout the year. Our drought outlook, it's expected to persist through parts of the Central Valley and Southern California. Again, big growing area right through the Central Valley is still expected to stay in drought. We're not expecting much in the way of wet weather, but nothing extreme either. So even though we saw that trend going up for our temperatures heading towards the holiday weekend, that 3-day Memorial holiday weekend, the likely wetter scenario shifts ever so slightly off to the east here. We will see a little representation of that in the central and southern part of the state. And as far as likely wetter, should get some precipitation through the Pacific Northwest and perhaps once again in Northern California. Again, we'll be watching closely to see how much that aligns with that holiday forecast. Highs for tomorrow, kicking off the weekend in the 50s for the Sierra. We're watching out for some showers, though, 60s and 70s down low. For the coast, highs are going to be in the 60s across inland areas. This will be the coolest day of the weekend, with highs in the 70s to near 80, putting us a little bit below average, not too far off the mark, because on the tail end of that, we get into much warmer conditions. In fact, look at the Sierra by the middle of next week. We're in the 70s for the high country around Lake Tahoe. 60s for our Saturday forecast for the foothills. We warm those highs into the 80s, awfully close to 90 by next Wednesday. Even the coast getting access to that warm weather with highs in the 70s by the middle of next week. Our 3-day forecast showing the weather impact alert on Sunday and Monday. Again, that is because of the fire risk. We'll be monitoring that very closely. Again, low-lying areas below 1,000 feet. So it's lower elevation, not necessarily wildland fires. Then we get into the heat event, but as we head towards the holiday weekend for Memorial Day, still trying to wrap my head around the fact that we're at Memorial Day. Highs are going to cool just a little bit. We'll be nice and toasty Saturday and Sunday for folks that want to hit the waterways and love to get kind of the heat on the land and then cool off in some of the area waterways. Just watch out, though. Again, they're running cold, fast, and high. But again, we'll be tracking the weather impact alert. And on the heels of that, we'll get into some of the warmer conditions.